October 2009, public hearing of the Board of Architecture Review. Appreciate everyone in attendance this evening. My name is Derek Wingfield. I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like the other members present this evening to introduce themselves, please.
Hello, my name is Monica Sumner.
Nathan Billings.
Rob Magrish.
Thank you all very much. I'd like to welcome the students from the Historic Preservation Program at the University of Kentucky that are with us this evening. Hope it's a good meeting for you all to listen to, and please feel free to participate. The board was established by zoning ordinance in 1958, and our first historic district was Gratz Park, and we now have a total of 14 historic districts throughout the county. The board, which is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Urban County Council, is a part of the Division of Historic Preservation. The Preservation Office maintains a full-time staff to assist you with your projects. The board encourages and recommends that all applicants use them as a resource. The Preservation Office is located at 101 East Vine Street in room 220. It is our procedure to consider applications in the order in which they are listed on our agenda. In each case, we'll attempt to sound the case, but if there are any questions from the applicant, the board, or any interested parties present, we'll go into a presentation and have the staff give us some background on the project, and then hear any additional comments from the applicant. The board will then ask questions and make comments regarding the application, and then hear any comments from any other interested parties. The chair will then ask the board members to enter a motion. If you'd like to address the board this evening, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the public record. I'd also ask that you please write your name on the sign-in sheet by the door so that all the information may be recorded correctly. I'd like to note the following staff approvals before we begin our review of applications this evening. There are many items that staff can approve, eliminating the necessity for most applicants to appear before the board. This evening there are a total of 10 approved applications, and I'll need to read those into the record quickly. In the South Ashland Central Avenue Historic District at 290 South Ashland Avenue, replace trees, and the Aylesford Historic District at 238 Arlington Avenue, re-roof garage, and at 465 Euclid Avenue, replace fence of rear yard. In the Belcourt Historic District at 208 Bell Place, renovate structure. In the Gratz Park Historic District at 258 Market Street, renovate structure. There are 3 in the South Hill Historic District, 340 South Mill Street, renovate structure and garage. 416 South Mill, remove deteriorated tree. And at 354 South Upper Street, replace deteriorated tree. The final 2 are in the Western Suburbs Historic District. At 700 West Short Street, replace storm windows. And at 724 West Short Street, renovate structure. We'll now proceed with the review of Certificate of Appropriateness applications. And the first application this evening is in the Gratz Park Historic District at 250 West 3rd Street. The scope of the work is to amend the location of an interpretive sign. Is that applicant present?
The applicant is not present but has received a staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Staff is recommending approval of the change to the COA as submitted. Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions regarding this case? Would anyone in the audience like to speak to this case this evening? Don't see anyone. I'd certainly entertain a motion regarding this one, please.
Mr. Chair, in reference to case number 188000250-B at 250 West 3rd Street in the Gratz Park Historic District, I would like to move to approve the application as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next application this evening is in the Aylesford Historic District at 342 Aylesford Place. The scope of the work is to remove a wood-framed addition. Is that applicant present?
Aye.
Get your name and address, please, sir.
Jeff Koonsman, 1632 Strader Avenue.
Thank you very much, sir. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding your case? They are recommending approval as submitted. Are you comfortable with that?
I am.
Excellent. Let's see if anyone on the board has any comments or questions for you. Anyone? Would anyone in the audience like to speak regarding this case this evening? Okay, I don't see anybody. I'd certainly entertain a motion for this one, please.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to case number 00980342-B located at 342 Aylesford Place, I move that the board adopt staff recommendation as submitted in it and approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Is there a second to the motion?
Second that.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. The next case this evening is at, pardon me, just a second. Let me flip pages here. .430 West 3rd Street in the North Side Historic District. The scope of the work is to demolish a garage. Is that applicant present?
And is not present, but has received board write-up.
Thank you, Mr. Ginocchio. The staff is recommending approval as submitted. Does anyone on the board have any comments or questions regarding this case? Is anyone in the audience here to speak to this case this evening?
I have an issue, I guess. It has nothing to do with the case, but with other cases from this applicant and this project in particular. I think I've recused myself,
Oh, okay.
so I'm officially recusing myself.
I think technically, Mr. Hosfield, you need to step out.
Even if we're not going to say anything? Whatever
Counsel?
you see fit, I'll do it.
Does it matter? Okay.
You can stay and just not comment and not vote, but you can be present.
Sounds good.
Thank you for the clarification. So, would be certainly willing to listen to a motion regarding this case, please.
Regarding case number 188-00430-C at 430 West 3rd Street, I would make a motion that we would issue the COA according to the staff's recommendations.
Thank you, Ms. Sumner. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next on our docket, we'll call number 4, case number 125202258-E, located at 258 Marketplace. Is the owner of the applicant present for this one? If you step up towards the microphone and please state your name and address for the record, whether you're the owner of the applicant.
My name is Tom Wilms. I'm with Wilmson Associates Architects here in town, and I'm representing the applicant.
Is this the applicant with you? If you'd step to the mic, ma'am, and state your name also.
It's Marcia Gray.
And have you had a chance to review the staff's recommendations and findings?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with them?
Wait a minute. Well, we have the wrong one here. Did you say?
You said 258
You said
Market.
258 Market Street.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to review the staff's recommendations
We
and
have,
findings?
we have.
And are you in agreement with those? Okay. What we'll do is if you could take a seat, we'll ask the staff to come up and give a presentation, and then we'll ask you back up to the microphone to address the board. Thank you.
This is the property at 258 Market Street, and the owner has set forward putting a huge amount of restoration work into this property, and she's gone before the board many times for changes. One of the, during the process of restoration, she replaced the glass in the front windows, or front doors, that location, and also on a side door with a intricate beveled glass, which is hard to see in these photos. There we go. Here's another side door prior to the new porch. And also installing bevel glass into this doorway. This time, the applicant would like to request to replace the glazing on the front glass and doors. Guidelines are included for your reference. The owner has taken care to carefully restore this 1840s Greek Revival structure. However, the replacement of the glazing of the new bevel glass glazing creates a false sense of history for the structure, and the glazing is an ornament not original to the structure, and that creates a false sense of history as referenced in Design Guideline 1-1D that states architectural details and features include the installation of additional ornament, which gives a building a false imitation historic appearance is not allowed. Therefore, the proposal to replace the glazing is not within the guidelines and not appropriate for the structure, and staff recommends disapproval. The applicant is here.
The applicant would like to step back up to the podium.
Thank you. I'd like to just hand these out if I could.
Please. And also make sure you pass one to this. We'll share up here. If you give us 4, we need to pass one to the staff so they can have it for the record. Share.
As staff just said, the front doors and the side door in the house have had some beveled glass installed in them. And what we're here today is to demonstrate to you or to show you that we feel differently than the staff and that the glass that is installed is appropriate for this style house. And we believe that for the character and the history and the style of the house, that this was an appropriate piece of glass to be installed, and that we can demonstrate under the guidelines which the BOAR operates that there's justification for this committee to approve this request. I brought some examples here of some different things I'd like to sort of go through. Because, the issue, not the issue, but the question sort of is, what style is appropriate for this Greek Revival house? And while I don't want to try to educate or try to lecture to you about what styles, this house may or may not be, I think that sort of is important to the question today, so if you bear with me just a little bit. If you look at the first handout that I gave, the subject property is on the left, and then I have, out of some style books, just picked a style that I thought was appropriate and relative to the subject property, which is of a Greek Revival house. And as you can see, I think the subject house is not a true classic Greek Revival in a lot of instances. The cornice work is not as elaborate as a traditional Greek Revival house would be. The doors on the front are not Greek Revival in style either. If you go to document number 2 for just a moment, what we would typically see in a true Greek Revival, or at least a Greek Revival house that is more classic, would have been a single door, and most likely surrounded by side lights and a transom over the top of it. You can see in the top example, and a lot of times in the bottom example is another structure, but that's what you typically would find as a traditional Greek Revival front door. And a lot of times that would have, as you can see in both of those examples, the top one is shown with beveled glass, and the bottom one is shown with ornamental glass, which has wood mullions through it. But what we have, and I think this is a good example. I mean, this certainly deserves to be called a Greek Revival house. But as we know, not all styles are distinctive, and were they built as a classic example. And just as the example on the right-hand side, which I think has some other than a fenestration in the window, but it's certainly is classified, and you can read in that text there, that is a Greek Revival house. with transitional to the later Italianate house. And, the lack of our cornice at the top, obviously the pediment and the fenestration around the door entering onto the brick is Greek Revival, but the doors themselves, if you would go to example number 4, if you don't mind, which is on the left, is the front doors that we have on the house. And, they certainly are leaning more towards an Italianate style door than a Greek Revival door. And the example on the right is a house at 424 West 3rd Street, which is Italianate, more Italianate in style. And you can see there's a very similar style of doors, and the glass at 424 West 3rd Street does have the beveled glass that you would anticipate, in something that's a little more Italianate. Our house, we feel, is one of those houses. While it's a beautiful home, and certainly within the Greek style, it's where styles have been married together. Either it was married together when it was constructed, or and I have nothing to substantiate this other than people's opinion, Clyde Carpenter suggested that perhaps this is not the original door to the house, that at some point, that perhaps this door was changed to this more Italianate style door. I don't have anything to substantiate that, other than it's definitely not a Greek Revival, but it certainly is still a part of the history of the house. And I know that in the past, the BOAR wants to be sensitive to the history of a house, and even if a house has evolved, whether it was original or whether it was changed at some period by a previous owner, to respect that that's what the house, that was the history and the character of the house. And whether it was changed or whether it was original to the house, we feel that that with this sort of transitional house and this transitional door, that the door is, leaning towards the Italianate, and the appropriate fenestration glass would be the beveled glass. The door obviously had glass in it when it was installed at whatever point. Both doors did. We did not remove any panels of wood to put this in. What was actually there, unfortunately, was a piece of plexiglass, and so we don't have any reference to what was there prior to this panel being installed, other than at some point in both doors, somebody had removed the glass, which we suggest would have very easily have been this style glass, and put plexiglass in it. And so we are wanting to take it back to an appropriate style of glass. We actually think that if this glass was to remain a solid piece of glass, which we feel is inappropriate for this style of door and in this transitional home, that is as much of a sense of false history, because that's not what would have been there, and it's not probably, in our opinion, what was there. Like I said, we don't know what was there because it was plexiglass when we came. We, looking at the guidelines, okay, which I know is what you need to base your decision on, and appreciate that. The guidelines that were cited, and 1.1, that the architectural details and features shall be maintained, retained, and should not be removed or changed if original to the building. The plexiglass that we took out was not original to the building. We are not taking any elements away that were original to the building. The architectural details and features should be repaired rather than replaced. If we had the original glass, we would certainly be in a position to repair it, but there wasn't any merit to trying to repair the plexiglass again. The next one is the architectural details and features, including the installation of additional ornament, which gives the building an imitation historic appearance, is not allowed. We agree 100% with that statement. but we contend that what was there was inappropriate, and that what we're doing is taking it back to what would have been appropriate for this building and for those doors. The next one, to some extent, in my mind at least, sort of contradicts the other one, the guideline, but or at least the architectural details and features, if replaced, should approximate the size, shape, material, color, texture, and other visual qualities of the original materials. Well, since once again, we're not replacing anything that was removed that was original to the house, but something that certainly needed to be taken care of. I think we follow that. We're following that because that is what should have been there. Windows should be preserved in the original location. We haven't moved anything. We haven't taken anything out. We're dealing with the opening and the fenestration that we have. So, by your own guidelines, or by the BAR guidelines, which we strongly support, we feel that we have met these guidelines, and that what we've done is an appropriate restoration of this door. The glass itself was made by Jim Krieger here in town, and it was handmade. It was not anything that was manufactured or manufactured. It was handmade, and it was all done with restoration glass. And it was also taken after a pattern of an 1800 piece of art glass, or not art glass, but beveled glass. And it was from a book that was published in 1911. So they did some research and did not just arbitrarily come up with this design. I think it was well researched. And you can tell, and the staff has said, the owners of this piece of property, the Grays, they have spent a fair amount of time renovating, adding screening in the porches, tuck pointing brick, and have done a lot of work to it. And they have spent, as staff has indicated, they have done a very meticulous job. And these windows are no different, the amount of research and the amount of effort that they've put into them. One of the things that is sort of unfortunate is that, for the additions and the porches and things they added, they were very much aware they needed to come in front of this board, this committee, to seek approval, which they did. I think they've been in front of you at least twice that you all have granted approval. They were not aware that they needed to come in front of the board for the windows, for this glass. They thought they were just, that they didn't need to do that. Obviously, if they had known that, they would be here. They would have been here before. I think their past history and performance tells you that they're very respectful of your role in this. And just while the glazing we find and feel is appropriate in its own right, it should also be noted that on that front door, the doors that you're looking at on those front doors, those are actually vestibule doors. There's a maybe 4 foot depth between the front fenestration, not fenestration, but the architrave in these doors. And there's actually a pair of solid doors, double solid doors that close in front of this. Those doors aren't currently on there being repaired and painted, and they will go back on. We strongly suspect, just in our conjecturing, that it's a very dark front hall, that if these doors, as Clyde Carpenter maybe suggested, were not original, that they were probably added at some time just as a sidebar, but added to let light into this front hall. But in the winter and stuff, of course, these front solid doors are closed. And also the door on the side that's referred to by staff was also a glass door, solid glass door with plexiglass that somebody had put in. And since then, as you might remember, there's a screen porch that was added over there. And so both of these doors, to some extent, are not on the facade of the house. They are, in shadow or filtered to some extent. Not that that makes any difference, because I think I'm not trying to hide them, but they are not the primary doors, because we think that the glazing is appropriate in its own right. We feel, like I said, that the guidelines, have been followed, and I hope that you can find that we have, and we ask that you, based on the guidelines in the presentation, grant the owner approval for the glazing. Be glad to answer any questions.
Sir, thank you very much. We'll see if the board has any comments or questions for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Magrish, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you. Looking at the photographs that are here, I actually agree completely with Clyde Carpenter's assessment of those doors. They are not Italianate, though. I think they actually are from probably the late 1890s, early 1900s, which actually means that the leaded glass design work that you got from a 1911 pattern book is absolutely appropriate for the doors. The fact that there obviously was some alteration of the house in the late 19th or early 20th century is an indication of the history of the house and sort of the progression of the architectural styles. In that the doors are recessed, they are clearly, in my opinion, replacements from whatever had been put on in the 1840s, and the fact that there are the additional wood doors that close at the street facade, and the design of not only those front doors but the ones on the side porch, all being alterations. I mean, those are not the style of doors that would have been applied in the 1840s. I think that what you did is appropriate, and I disagree with the staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Mr. Hosfield?
I think as a group we need to decide if which of the following three things are happening with the glazing in this door. By adding the bevel glass, are we recreating the historical element? Or are we designing in context? Or are we adding ornament to the building? I personally think we're designing in context. It's just hard to prove it because nobody knows what the glass looked like before the plexiglass was in place.
Right. You do your historical investigations.
Oh, everything you said was, you made some strong points towards context of other buildings like these. I think we just need to, as a board, decide which of those three is happening here and if it's okay.
If I may suggest, I know, but your 1.1E, to me, sort of gives you in my opinion, the latitude to put it, maybe frame it within that guideline.
That is the guideline I was referring to by designing in context.
If it's replaced,
I think that's certainly a valid discussion point. Mr. Hosfield, I'm sure we'll be talking about it in just a few minutes as a group. Ms. Sumner?
Very briefly, I do agree with Mr. Magrish's statement, and I do think that 1E sort of tells the tale for me as to the fact that this is within context.
Thank you very much. Mr. Billings?
I'm always appreciative of Mr. Magrish's ability to spell out in common terms what I can think in my head but can't say. I would also actually look at guideline 7 regarding doors. It's not in the staff report, it wasn't brought up in the discussion, but I think 7B also lends credence to support Mr. Magrish's point. The design principle under guideline 1.7 is that as points of entry, doors and door surrounds are important features in defining the style and character of a building. Significant doors should be preserved and maintained, and significant features should be repaired rather than replaced. It goes on to say in 1.7 point B, doors that cannot be repaired or that are missing may be replaced. Replacement doors should match the historic door in materials and size and should be appropriate for the style and period. They should have the same series of panels and have a frame of the same dimensions. Door replacements should be based on documented research and or historic photographs, which I think we have now. Historic buildings of the same style and similar date of construction may provide guidance for identifying appropriate doors. In replacing missing original doors, replacement doors should be similar in design to the original in style, materials, glazing, open paren, glass area, closed paren, and lights, open paren, pane configuration, closed paren. I think based upon that guideline that what you propose is not outside the guidelines, and that's based upon Mr. Magrish's comments in that guideline. I would be in favor of supporting the COA submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Mr. Hosfield, I think we've got a fairly good consensus about the direction that we're interpreting the guidelines as a board in and addressing the.
I think so. I agree with everything we've said so far. I think we're on the right track.
Well, let's see if anyone in the audience has any comments or questions they'd like to make this evening. Staff like to make any comments? Sir, would you like to make any more comments?
No, finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we've had a good discussion with some compelling some compelling evidence, and I think that a motion would be in order.
Well, Mr. Chair, in reference to case 125-2022-58-E at 258 Market Street, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as submitted, citing guideline I-1E and 7B. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, counsel.
Okay. Based on the presentation of the applicant and the appearance that the doors are a late 19th century, early 20th century replacement, and the new glass windows that have been installed are appropriate to that period, we feel that it's appropriate for this particular structure.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Mr. Hosfield, is the findings acceptable to your second?
My second still stands.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next case this evening is in the Belcourt Historic District at 222 Delmar Avenue. The scope of the work is to paint the unpainted brick structure. Is that applicant present?
The applicant's not present, but did receive the staff write-up.
Have you had any contact?
No, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dye. Have you had any contact with the applicant?
None.
Okay. If it pleases the board, maybe we'll put this one aside and give the applicant an opportunity to arrive if they wish. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. All right. We'll move on to the North Side Historic District at 449 West 3rd Street. The scope of the work is to install and change openings and to construct stoop and steps. Is that applicant present? Sir, if you'd like to come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Seth Brewer, 449 West 3rd Street.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendation?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with them?
No.
Okay. Just so everybody's on the same page, if it's okay with you, maybe we'll have the staff run through the presentation, make sure we're all caught up on exactly what the proposal is, and then we'll call you right back up.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
This is the property at 449 West 3rd Street. As you recall, on September of this year, the 9th, this case was heard and continued that the portion of the request to replace the existing first floor single-door entry in the additions portion of the rear elevation with an opening containing a pair of French doors with side lights, so as to allow the applicant the opportunity to determine if the ceiling height in the addition would allow a transom be installed above the proposed new door opening that allowed the head height of the opening to align with that of the new casement windows. This is the rear that is in concern. The two windows would go there, and this door would be replaced with a set of French doors, and that's the existing with side lights. And that was because of that kitchen area that those casement windows were going to be held up high, and they were going to be held at the same height as the window on the east side of that kitchen. The board approved, at that time, the board approved that portion of the request to install the two new first floor window casements, window openings, at 2.5-story portion of the rear elevation, and to replace the existing rear entry concrete stoop and steps, having the metal handrails with new concrete stoop and steps. With the following conditions, the final details for the masonry stoop, steps, and handrail be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to the start of any said work. The applicant has now verified that there is sufficient head height in the addition to allow a transom above the door such that the head height of the new door unit and the new transom might align. Therefore, at this time, that portion of the request of September the 9th was continued, is to replace the existing first floor single door entry with addition portion of the rear elevation with an opening containing a pair of French doors with side lights. So the findings reference the proposal to enlarge and create new openings in the rear wall of the structure to accommodate the current needs of the owner is found to be appropriate in accordance with the guidelines. However, the manner which that is done required careful consideration. The French door head height is 24 inches lower in the elevation, found to be incompatible. Reference scale proportion placement per guidelines 17E and 124E. Also, the proposal to use a multi-light French door system would not reflect the characteristics of the current period, as does the casement windows. That's guideline 2A4E. A more appropriate design, including the casement windows and the French door system, would be achieved by the introduction of a transom above the door system, such that its head height is the same as the casement windows, plus the elimination of the multi-light glazing of the French door system. Staff recommends approval as submitted with the following conditions: the door and side lights be of full light design, that's no muntins. The transom light be installed above the door side light unit to achieve the same head height elevation as that of the casement windows, and the final revised drawings of the rear elevation showing the transom and new roof line be submitted to staff prior to the issuance of the COA. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Mr. Giannacchio. Mr. Brewer, if you'd like to come back forward, please. And the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Well, I agree with recommendation number 1, doors and side lights be of full light design. That's fine. And number 3, final revised drawing of the rear elevation showing transom and new roof line be submitted to staff prior to issuance of COA. That's fine, of course, I've obviously submitted plenty of information already. I'm more than happy to keep submitting. Number 2, however, I'm still in disagreement over. Transom light be installed above door side light unit to achieve same head height elevation as that of the casement windows. I appreciate that side lights have been granted approval. However, I'm still not interested in having a transom over the door. A, it is cost prohibitive, but B, and more importantly for me, it's not our wish to have a transom light there. And then as far as the guidelines used to support the argument that I should not have French doors plus side lights, I have to point out again that I feel like there is some inconsistency woven into the guidelines that are being used here, and therein I feel like this decision is very arbitrary, and so it's on that grounds that I disagree with the validity of the argument that I shouldn't be able to put in side lights and doors. The guidelines that I mentioned as being contradictory are in the guidelines that were included with this packet, even though not all of them were mentioned as supporting the argument. But for guideline I-24E, new openings, when permitted by the review process, shall be compatible in scale, size, proportion, placement, and style to historic openings. That sounds a lot like what I've been told I'm not to be doing, which is imitating history or replicating history, which is exactly what's being reinforced in guideline IIA or 11A 4E. Additions, which I'm not even trying to do, should reflect characteristics of the current period in design, but be compatible with the original building. So I'm getting mixed messages there. As far as following one of the 2 guidelines that was mentioned, 17E, I-7E, doors installing new door openings is not recommended. New openings, when permitted, shall be compatible in scale, size, proportion, placement, and style to historic openings. If the back door unit was in proportion to the front door unit, the other existing original historic opening, then the door would be about 5 feet tall. If we're looking at wall volume to door volume, or mass, which was, I think, the terminology used when I was before you for the second floor windows of the addition in September. So if we're concerned with the weight of the wall versus the weight of the door, the proportion of the door unit in relation to the wall, if my basis of comparison or sounding board here is the front door, front wall, that door is 3 feet 5 inches wide and 9 feet tall. If I was to try to replicate that on the back with a French door unit, the French doors and transoms would be 15 feet 9.5 inches tall. With the tallest door that I can presently buy, which is 8 feet tall, I believe, that would make for another 7 feet 9.5 inches of transom window, which is not even possible. I mean, back to the ceiling inside the first floor, I couldn't go that high. Now, I'm exaggerating to make a point. I mean, but a 15, nearly 16-foot tall window opening or door opening would look ridiculous and is not possible. But that is what would be required to stay in proportion with the other original opening. So, considering that this addition, that its wall, which you saw, is blank except for 2 attic windows, I feel like this is not going to jeopardize the aesthetic integrity of the house. So, those are my thoughts. That's why I disagree.
Sir, thank you very much. Let's see if the board has any comments or questions
Thanks.
for you. Ms. Sumner? Okay. Mr. Hosfield?
Yeah, I just have a quick note. I believe I understand the point you're trying to make with comparing the back door to the front door. However, I don't believe anybody's asking you to match the scale of the front door with your rear door. The issue at hand...
Just the guideline.
Well, I know, but the issue at hand here is the height of the new opening for your door and its relationship to the new window openings that are immediately adjacent, same wall, side by side. And the character of the house is that the other openings align across the top, and we want to see that repeated on the back. I think it's that simple.
Well, then,
so-
we're stuck between two head height compatibility interests. If I make the casement windows the same height as the original existing double hung window that is already in there.
We've already talked about those windows, and I think we resolved that issue.
Yeah, except
But what
that
we're
we're back
talking
to
about now
needing
are
to
the
make the
doors.
door that height as well. Which is not my issue, not my interest. I'm not interested in doing that.
Well, my thoughts are that they should align per the staff's recommendation, and I'm trying to explain to you why I agree with them.
You want to help me pay for the transom window?
Mr. Billings?
What's going to be the required height of the transom if you align it with the existing casements and the proposed rear elevation? I can't tell from that what the actual height of the transom is going to be by that drawing.
Hold on a second.
It was a question I had in the prior hearing that we never got. I don't think I asked it at least, and if I did, I forget the answer. But because I could never, it looks like the casements are 5.5 feet tall.
Yep.
But I could never tell how far off the ground or from the base of the door those were.
They're 15 inches from the ceiling, like the existing double hung window that's in there.
Okay. But I'm trying to measure from basically the floor up rather than from the ceiling down to try to figure out what the actual height of that transom would be based upon what we're talking about.
I don't have that information.
Martin, do you know that?
It's written right in the report. It's approximately 24 inches. It's the second
24
paragraph.
inches lower than. Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have a copy of the COA on this case, on this house, for the windows that were around the side? Is that the first time this house came up? This is the third time, right? And the first one was on the windows and the raising the raise of roof.
Raising second
Didn't we
floor
were-
windows.
What happened with the windows in that original COA? I don't remember. Does anyone?
It was accepted. Well,
We allowed the height to go up, but we had a discussion about the window levels
right.
on
I
that side.
agreed to bring the windows into the same size as the windows on the first floor.
But were they level across from that addition with the ones on the front side? See, my recollection is that they were the same height as the ones from the first floor, but that they weren't level with the windows on the original structure. So we're talking about basically that rear addition.
My quick recollection is that they aligned obviously with each other, but not with other elevations necessarily. That there was, within each plane, everybody is aligned within each elevation, but not around in a full circle.
Okay, that's
all four
what I
elevations.
recall is they aligned on that addition, but they didn't align with the main structure.
I believe that's
Which
correct.
is not at all uncommon most of the
Well,
time.
because I don't have it in front of me, I couldn't remember. So I want to make sure I was correct in that. Okay.
Yeah, and that one, I brought those windows, we brought those windows into, made them identical to the windows on the first floor. So the second floor replicated the first floor as far as the windows, and the window to wall weight that I was referring to earlier.
This is a troublesome addition. I know this is the third time we've been here. I think I said this last time, which is I think it's going to look weird not having the transom come across with a level line, but the guidelines aren't what I think is going to look nice or look off balance. It's going by the guidelines with respect to scale issues. And my recollection tells me, and perhaps it's wrong, that there was a part of the initial discussion on the windows regarding the same type of issue with the windows lining up, which is why we required the second floor to be the same as the first floor windows on that addition, but they didn't have to be in line with the windows from the main structure when you heightened that addition, because it was an addition. And I think this is the same principle, that we're dealing with a door that's on the addition. It's on the rear elevation of the property, but it's different structure than the main property, than the main house. So I don't think under the guidelines I can disapprove it. I don't know that I personally do, because I don't know that I like the look of it, but I don't think that it's in violation of the guidelines to want to do that.
Well, comparing this experience, this application to the previous COA that you're referencing, the requirements placed on me, or the compromise that we came to about those windows, was predicated on the windows of that addition and on another wall of the addition, whereas this work, I'm not replicating the head heights of that addition. I guess because it's a whole different direction facing wall. Now we're no longer interested in replicating that addition, which we were last time. Now we're talking about new work in the original house. We're completely shifting.
I believe the issue at
Basis
this
of
time
comparison.
is the rear facade, just the rear facade. And I agree. I recall also that we did have to make a break between relating facades, the front to the side to the rear, because there was just no way to make all of them align. And
There was nothing on the rear the first time around. There was nothing to relate it to the first time. You saw the picture, there are no windows.
front to the side, as it were. My point being, we weren't able to make them all the same, and that we divided it in from the addition to the original house and other facades. We just agreed to say they don't have to match, but they need to match.
Oh, well, in that case, I can match the door to the windows in the addition.
I'm trying to put together a thought here.
I'm working with you. I mean, this is a collaborative process, right?
I thought it was.
You okay, Mr. Billings?
I don't have anything else right now.
Mr. Magrish?
Just for my own clarification, and I don't know if this came up last time, I can't remember, in the, what is the addition section of the kitchen, the new kitchen layout, what is the ceiling height in the addition?
12 feet.
Okay. In the area that is marked on this plan as kitchen, which is in the main body of the original house,
Correct.
what is the ceiling height in that room?
And in the original structure, the kitchen ceiling height is 12 feet. I'm sorry if I
Oh,
got it
okay.
backwards.
And then in the
addition,
addition?
it is 10 foot 11, I believe. 10 foot 6.
So 12 and 10 foot 6. Okay. And then, and I'm sorry if you said this already, in that kitchen area that's in the original house where the two new windows are going in the rear, the dimension from the ceiling to the head of the window, the top of the window, is
15 inches, like in the existing double hung that's in there.
Okay. Okay, so we've got a 3-inch, looks like, it looks like that and I'm just saying if a transom was put in over the door, and it was designed to match the head height of the new windows on that rear wall, that instead of having 15 inches, you'd have 3, or did I do the math wrong? Is that right? The head height between the ceiling and the top of the transom, if it matches, would just be 3 inches rather
I
than
see what you
15?
mean. Yeah, it's a pretty small amount of space.
Okay,
And considering
so
a pier
it-
has to go in there, or a post, a
Okay,
beam as well.
so there would be, I mean, that's quite a...
It is possible, and frankly, I wanted to apologize to you because during the last meeting, you did a rendering of a transom, and my argument about how goofy it would look was based entirely on a crescent pattern transom, which was all that I was thinking about because it's what's in, our current house that we moved out of
Right.
over here, and that's what I think of when I think of transoms and historic homes, not the rectangular one. that you
Right,
drew.
and I think that what's being suggested by the staff and in our previous conversations was the rectangular. And I understand that on the interior, it would be very tight, so I don't know if you're having crown molding or whatever put up, but it does tell me there is actually enough room to do it. And I think that as an overall design element, I'm afraid I do have to agree with the staff's recommendation. I think that a rectangular style transom over the door is really needed to keep the balance and the line of the to the new windows. Keep that all the same going across, per the sketch that I think I did at the last meeting or the last time you were up. So, I mean, I understand that maybe you feel that it's not your personal aesthetic, but I think that we need to look more at what the overall aesthetic of the structure is and sort of look at it a little bit more objectively.
I appreciate your comments and your method of delivery, but my issue, back to something that I said, just a blurb, was that it is cost prohibitive. If it wasn't even just my opinion, I'm in a position where to keep the new casement windows similar in head height, same elevation as the existing kitchen window, which is very important to me because it's in the same space inside the house, to bring the door into line with those windows, into line with that existing window, is a very expensive undertaking. And what it sounds like I'm hearing is that to do any work, to put French doors in there like we want to do, we are being forced to spend the money on a transom. I disagree with that.
I don't think that it's a matter of force. I think it's really what's appropriate because of a house in a historic district and the design of the house. I also think that it might be something that you could talk to your contractor about as doing as a phased unit. They could do the initial destruction of the wall surface and put in a lintel that would support the upper brick, and maybe you put in your French door unit, and for at least for the time being, put in a wooden panel or something like that.
Right.
With the understanding that when funds would allow, that would be replaced by a transom window.
When it's not cost prohibitive, it's okay to be required to put it in. I mean,
Let me ask two more questions. First, we haven't talked about the full light, on the windows. Is there...
we agreed.
That's okay?
We accepted that.
Okay,
That
that's
was
what-
not our desire, but we conceded
Okay,
that.
I missed that earlier, so I wanted to check that off. And the second one, in the staff report, I didn't read that to mean that had to be a rectangular or 90-degree edge transom light. Does the staff have an opinion on that, or is it just saying that there just needs to be a transom?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Sure. I didn't read the staff report to recommend what type of transom it had to be, whether it was oval in nature or rectangular in nature.
Rectangular is the intent in terms of being in
that's what
rhythm.
I didn't
with
read
the
that. I
design.
just wanted to make sure that we were clear on what
we-
the staff wanted.
It's expected from the staff's perspective that what we're talking about is rectangular.
Well, I feel like we're beating a dead horse. I just want to be clear that the priority here is placed on the lines created by the openings of that north-facing wall, and that the west-facing wall, that addition wall that we discussed earlier, that has no bearing, that the heights of the windows on that wall have no bearing on the heights of the door opening. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right?
let me ask this question, because I wasn't present for the West Wall debate. Does the proposed French door meet the same window height as the windows in the rest of this addition area, on that floor?
I haven't actually brought the heights of those windows with me, so I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it's closer than the height of the doors plus the transom.
Okay.
It's just that all of this can't be tied together. It's just that it's not possible to bring it all
Well,
together.
if the windows if you're looking at this addition as a single unit of the house, and it is an addition, and it is not uncommon historically that window and door heights in additions are not the same as in the original structure. If the window height of the wall and the door in the back are at the same height, then there is actually a historic precedent for that.
Let's table it, and I'll be back next time.
That's fine. If you
All right.
can get those dimensions, that would be very helpful. And then
I'll do
you
it.
actually do have something to look at that has some historic precedent.
Alrighty. Well, again, like I said, in September after the first window meeting, about the second floor addition, even though we're disagreeing, I appreciate your all's time. And thanks again to the staff. They're immensely helpful.
Do we need a motion to table this then?
Be a continuance, but I believe it's
A continue? Do we want to continue it for one hearing? Is that okay with the applicant?
Deadline for action on this is November the 17th, and so you have one more board meeting in that time frame, and that's November the 11th.
Is that acceptable to the
For
applicant?
the 11th.
That'd be acceptable to the applicant?
That's fine.
Sort of pull the board to make before we vote to see if we have sort of consensus. That'd be all right.
That's fine.
We do have to
Yeah,
vote.
we do have a motion. Let's see if anyone in the audience, before we go any further, is here to speak to this case this evening. Make sure you're heard if you'd like to be. Okay. Certainly entertain a motion.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to continue this until the November 11th meeting, and we will move on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, sir.
See you then.
Pardon me. The next case this evening is in the North Side Historic District at 318 West 3rd Street. The scope of the work is to change wall material. Is that applicant present? If you'd like to come forward, please, and give us your name and address.
Dynamic duo.
Just need your names and addresses, please.
My name is John Pappas, address 1713 Clays Spring Lane.
Sir, thank you very much.
My name is Frank Culberson. I'm at 3104 Pinkard Pike.
Thank you very much. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding your case?
Yes.
Are you in agreement with them?
Excuse me?
Are you in agreement with the recommendation?
I think you all denied, actually.
Staff is recommending disapproval, yes.
Not necessarily, but if we can maybe plea a slight case.
Absolutely. If you did entertain, I think we'll have the staff make a presentation, make sure we're all familiar with the case and talking about the same things, and we'll have you right back up.
Actually, this is a... Oh.
Lights, please. Oh, this one's a little dark. This is the structure at 318 West 3rd Street. This is, of course, a one-story log structure. We've seen and heard this case in the past for over a year now, and it's got a frame addition above. right now it's under immense construction, so it's a little daunting, the whole project, because the proposal was, of course, to repair or replace some of the logs as required and needed because of the deterioration level, and also to replace the masonite top with another reveal. The portions that we're talking about are, sorry, this portion right here is proposed to be replaced with the logs that the applicant wants to continue across this whole bit, this whole wall section, this elevation. This, of course, is log. This is clapboard. Underneath this is log. And then this is a brick portion. And there's also, on the other side, another brick portion. And this sort of shows, again, the evolution with the one pile log structure, the brick, this top frame portion, and then the one-story addition in the rear. This is the structure presently. Again, the brick this is the opposite side between the two buildings. This is the portion of wall proposed to be replaced and bringing the new logs across. The walls are do need some support presently because they were tied into some of the existing materials, and of course, as all the existing materials are changed and reframed, the walls are a little bit more precarious presently. In addition, the interior plasterwork has been removed, which also has compromised their structural stability because, again, all the structural plasterwork has been removed. At this time, the owner is requesting that the BOAR grant a certificate of appropriateness to remove the brick walls and replace them with the logs that are salvaged in order to replace the deteriorated logs as part of this whole project of being replaced. Guidelines are included for your reference. The proposal to remove the brick walls of the circa 1790 structure is not within the guidelines nor appropriate for the structure. The replacement of the brick walls with log is contradictory towards guidelines 11A, 11E, 11D, and 13DN, which respectively say architectural details and features shall be maintained and retained and shall be removed or changed if original to the building. Architectural details and features if replaced should approximately be the same size, shape, material, color, texture, and other visual qualities of the original materials. Architectural details and features including the installation of additional ornament would give the building an imitation historic appearance is not allowed. Brickwork and masonry should not be obscured, covered, or removed if original. This building was built in 4 stages, all before 1890, and the building began as a log cabin. Then the building was extended with brick addition, then a second story with frame additions, and was placed atop, and eventually one-story frame addition was added onto the brick portion. The various materials tells the story of the evolution of the building, and the brick walls are part of this evolution of the building. The removal of them and their expansion of logs changes the course of history and creates a false sense of history. This building is noted to be one of the few extinct structures of the early Lexington history, and most notably a log cabin in association with the brick building next door. In addition, small log cabins such as these usually were one pile and were never very large, and the extension of the logs created an inappropriate or larger dimension than the building initially had. Staff suggests the brick walls be repaired and remain in situ, and recommendation staff recommends disapproval as submitted.
Thank you, Ms. Armstrong. Sir, if you'd like to come back forward, please, the floor is yours.
See. Don't ask me why I bought these two structures side by side, but obviously investing quite a bit of money in these structures and trying to be true to, the architectural heritage of the buildings. If we see the very front of the building here where it's being constructed, you see the second-story addition is the log underlies the total width of the second-story structure. If we look to the side where, I guess, okay, sorry about that. If we look to the side here, the logs actually are underneath this portion here. This has already been removed, and the logs are visible, and the rotted logs are going to be replaced. So if we look to the side of the building, I was thinking that for continuity of what's appearing here below this structure and what's appearing here below this structure, that it would be appropriate to just use a log facing to the cabin. What really prompted this whole thing, I'll try to move this slide, is this particular brick area is having problems. It's bowed out to, let's say, like a C, probably about 10 to 12 inches actually from the underlying building. So it has no function at the present time. We've structurally created a new foundation and such, but we have a cavity in there now, maybe for bad things to occur, whatever that might be, or moisture or animals, or I don't really know what other kinds of bad things can occur. For saleability, actually, of the cabin, if somebody sees this and you see this bowed area here, we're investing considerable funds in this particular building, and to not be able to have something that we could sell and or rent or something for a reasonable fee, I don't want somebody to look at it and say you're not really addressing some very basic structural problems or repairs here. As we're going to attempt to pull that in, I mean, we've held this up by hook or by crook so it just doesn't fall on its own. So we're taking some effort to actually preserve that. But, as we pull it back in, it might fall also with some kind of repairs that we might be able to make to it. And I think, I'm not sure Frank would know what these things are, C-arms or something, where we're going to try to pull it back in. It's still going to have a bowed appearance, and it's not going to be flat against the surface. So, so I guess the main thing is that if we have this addition above, log below, and addition above, and log below, and addition above, it would seem to have more of a continuity, and certainly we think it would look better. It would be sellable, and the current brick area, which is only about this wide, doesn't perform any function, as indeed structurally causing us some real issues. So that was my rebuttal, I guess.
One other comment on that is it pulling that wall back in. I kind of came in a little late on this, but pulling that wall back in, if that wall were to collapse, we would have to rebuild it to be back in place. And can we actually rebuild it, in the character that it is now? It may look actually new. And the idea was to bring those logs across and trying to keep a continuity of the log cabin from the original structure. So I just thought I'd add that. There's concern about rebuilding that wall.
Thank you all very much. Let's see if any of the board members have any comments or questions for you. Ms. Sumner?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Billings?
I know this property came before us before, was it about a year ago? Is it that long ago?
Yes.
And I couldn't find that in my file, which means I probably recycled it after the hearing. But I don't remember, this wall wasn't part of that application, was it, staff? Okay, it was the other side of the timbers, correct, and the front door
It was the
header?
log portion on the west side.
Okay. And none of that's being affected by any of this brickwork then? I mean, I actually guess they're trying to take maybe those timbers to put in this brick section, what my hunch was, but is that what they're trying to do?
Well, they've decided now to go back and put the log in because that was what the motion
Well, that's opened
was.
up.
And then the new logs that they're salvaging are what they're proposing to put in this location.
Then,
So the west side retains its logs.
Okay.
And, well, it has improved logs, I guess I'd say.
yeah, I think they were in pretty bad shape for what we remember from the
Right.
picture. I went by the
But-
property 3
but
times
the
this week and there's a
concept-
hole there now, so I don't know.
Yeah, the concept is in place and been done with materials in better shape on the west wall.
Yeah, it looks like it's coming along really well, actually. Okay, that's what I didn't know. How long is this section? Yeah, how, is it 8 feet? 9 feet, okay. And this is, with the staff, this is as unquestionably the second addition to the home, correct? It is not the original one-room structure that was then later rebricked. It is, because I don't have a drawing from the internal looking at where this is, where this brick is on.
Log house, brick addition,
Right.
frame
That's why
addition.
I don't have a drawing looking at the brick overlay on a top-down to know where this brick is, so I'm just making sure that I'm correct.
But it's rectangular shoebox, brick behind it, frame behind and up.
Okay.
Not that it really matters, but we've gotten some logs, and not that it's necessarily period, but, we have some logs from John Hunt Morgan where he stayed in a cabin or lived in a cabin in Indiana. So those are the logs we're actually going to use for this. Again, not that it has anything to do with the 1787 or 1790 cabin, but nonetheless, I think we're going to put that on, the history of the rebuilding of the
Still pretty cool.
stuff like that. So it's a shame. I just dagger to my heart to actually make these logs, which are.
Derek's kids won't go to sleep when they find this out tonight.
What's that?
Derek's kids won't go to sleep once they find that out tonight. They'll be so excited.
But that we have to actually cut them, to put this. It just I thought would be a better use.
Mr. Billings. Mr. Hosfield?
I think the issue is, just so I can wrap my head around it, it may sound like I'm repeating a whole bunch of stuff here, and I'm sorry. We permitted, on the other side of the house, they maintained the log. Now, some had to be repaired and some had to be replaced, but still, in the end, it was in keeping with what the original structure, the logs. And on this other side of the house, the issue is there's a brick addition, and there are the original logs. And the intent is to, it sounds like, add a historic element in place of the brick by extending the log facade across, which is pretty, there are some pretty clear statements against that in the guidelines. Am I correct?
I would agree with that interpretation.
Okay. That's all I have then.
Thank you. Mr. Bagrish?
Well, first of all, I want to commend you for taking these on. They're two very important houses in a very historic area of the city, and I'm very glad that you've decided to.
We'll accept contributions on the way out.
Okay, very good. But that I do think that part of the importance of this house is the fact that it went from a log structure with a brick addition to a two-story frame with a rear kitchen in frame also. And I think it's important to retain that because that is what the house is about. To change that, I think it changed the history and the appearance in a way that just doesn't tell the next generation the story. I think it's great that you're getting these logs that have some history to them, and I'm sure that they have some nice patina that will work well with the existing structures. And it is somewhat of a shame also to have to cut them down. But I think that in the end, you'll be better off retaining these various elements so that the story of the house remains intact. And as far as the bowing of the brick wall, I mean, I commend you for trying to do anything you can to try to pull it together, but should it collapse, it can be rebuilt in an appropriate fashion using appropriate materials. There's a certain kind of mortar that's good for historic brick and things like that. And it may initially have a new appearance, but I think that over time it will gain a patina that will then blend in with the rest of it. And this has happened before. In fact, the house I live in on South Mill Street, one wing and part of the front facade collapsed back in, I think it was 1980, when they were doing the restoration of the house. And, I mean, everybody goes, oh, damn, you know. But it is part of the things that do happen. But yeah, I think it's better to try to retain that brick section, whether it has to be completely rebuilt or just tied back in some way.
Well, that would be in keeping with the same thing that happened on the other side of the house with the logs as well, as
exactly.
an issue of repairing and replacing, but maintaining the original material.
Yes.
So I think we come back to the brick is here to stay.
Yes. I am concurring with what you're saying.
I have two more things. Is this brick actually supporting anything, or is it a facade?
No, it's a facade.
Okay. That's actually unusual for a structure that old.
Well, it's
have they reframed it inside, and that's
It's currently a facade.
Become a
I don't
facade,
know.
but
Facade,
it
okay.
was a structural member wall.
okay.
The
And then-
whole structure was really in quite danger of complete collapse, actually. Yeah.
what about the brick on the west side of the building?
I think that we're just going to retain.
Okay.
Because that is reasonably straight. And that's not at all visible to the exterior in any way, meaning it's a very narrow
Well, it's
and
a
closed
36-inch corridor between the next building, but that's one of the reasons I ask is actually, regardless of whether you can see it or not, one of the things we do is take a 360 all-encompassing view of property without limiting it from a side or rear elevation, or even if you can, how far off you can see it from the side. And that's what I think especially if the brick's still going to remain on the other side, it is important for it to remain on that side. I don't want to disappoint you, but I
we
think
could
it's
take that
keeping with the
down if you
historical
wanted us to,
integrity
but,
of the structure. I will say, I walk by this property every day, and it's been sitting for a year with no work, and when the work started up recently, I got very excited, and because I think it's a great structure, and I'm excited
Well,
to
banks
see what
weren't
you all do.
loaning money, so that's what caused the, stopping.
Seen the new footers you all poured down underneath the foundation?
Yes,
And those are,
inside and out, yeah.
yeah, it's great.
Is it okay, Ms. Sumner? Let's see if anyone in the audience has any comment. Sorry, got away from the microphone there. See if anyone in the audience has any comments or questions regarding this case. Don't hear anyone. I think we're probably on the same page here that the retention of the brick is an important factor. Not only is it keeping with the guidelines, it's retaining the history and story of the evolution of this structure, just to sort of rehash what we've been talking about. I think that should anyone be willing, and you all are certainly more than able to certainly entertain a motion regarding this.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to case number 188000318-J at 318 West 3rd Street, I move that the application be denied per staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfield. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Magris. Any discussion of the motion? I'd also like to take another opportunity to commend you all for taking on this project. I know you might be feeling some financial pressures after taking it on, but it's truly admirable to be participating in the preservation of such an early structure. Thank you for for the undertaking. That said, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Let's see, the next case this evening, flip pages here, is in the Aylesford Historic District at 272 Kentucky Avenue. The scope of the work is to demolish a roof and construct a second floor. Is that applicant present?
My name is Lynn Pettigo. I live at 559 North Broadway.
Thank you very much. Have you had an opportunity to read the staff's findings and recommendations regarding this case?
Yes, I have.
Are you in agreement with them?
No.
Okay. Pardon me. If you'd be willing, I think we'll maybe have the staff do a presentation so we're all talking about the same thing, and we'll have you right back up, Ms. Pettigo.
This is the property of 272 Kentucky Avenue. I'll take you a quick tour around the building in a counterclockwise direction. This is the front facade, of course. It has in the past, it had a porch here in this fore corner, which is the northwest corner of the house, which has been enclosed, and this new porch, which goes all the way across the front of the structure, constructed with a ramp that goes down the right side of the structure. Originally, the steps were in front of this area, sidewalk and steps in front of the area where that entry door is. This is the right side of the structure. The proposed addition, second floor addition, is to start right behind this dormer, and we'll go back to the second story at the rear portion of this facade. This is the rear corner that was built as a two-story. And it's the rear elevation. To fill the two-story proposed second-story addition will wrap around this two-story element here. Another rear elevation. And this is the left side, or the north facade. And you'll see how this proposed addition will start at the back face of this dormer and enclose this space here. Quickly, in the floor plan, this is the second floor plan, and the area in concern is this L-shaped area right here. So the roofs of all these elements would be removed, and then this is the existing elevations. And this is the new addition, would be the second floor area here on this elevation. I need to go back here one. And then the second floor here. And then for the rear elevation, we get this infill here. The applicant at this time is requesting the board grant the COA to remove the entire roof systems of the rear half of the structure and construct a new second floor and wall and framing system into that L-shaped area of the rear half of the structure, which is currently single-story in height. Construct a new gable roof system over the entire rear half of the structure. The proposed addition is to have walls finished and matching 4-inch revealed vinyl clapboard siding and eyebrow projection, including gutter, which matches the existing soffit of the one-story portion of the building, is to wrap the existing and two-story addition, the existing. The new 3 and 12 pitch gable roof system is to have dimensional fiberglass shingles. The 12-inch wide soffit is to be furnished with perforated vinyl. The fascia board is to be redwood and have a gutter which matches the existing gutter. At the rear elevation, the windows of the new second floor addition to match those 1/1 and fixed design of the existing adjacent windows. The side elevations, the new windows to be of 1/1 design. A similar design window is proposed in the west wall of the north dormer. At the end of this writing, the construction materials of the windows, at the time of the writing, the construction of the windows was not known. We've listed the guidelines for your reference, the findings. This 1.5-story T-plane cottage constructed between 1890 and 1920 had a projecting parlor bay with a gable end facing the street and an inset front porch. Additions made to the original structure prior to the Adelsville neighborhood being designated a local historic district in 1998 appears to have included the enclosure of the original porch, construction of the shed front porch extending the full width of the house, construction of the second floor dormer on either side of the structure, the construction of a 2-story gable roof addition at the rear southeast corner of the structure, and a 1-story shed roof addition at the rear northeast corner of the structure. The proposal to increase the living space of this structure by adding a second floor to the original 1 1/2-story historic structure is found inappropriate, not within the guidelines. Guidelines 115A state roofs should be preserved in their original size, shape, and pitch. Guidelines 2A4C states additions should be of comparable design and design with the original building's design, and roof shape, material, color, and location of the window, doors, and cornice heights. Guidelines 2A4H states additions should not be made by adding new stories, and Guideline 6E states demolition, if tied to further development of the property, further development should be compatible in scale, size, and use with existing zoning and existing characteristics of the historic properties where the development is located. Because of these guidelines, staff recommends disapproval as submitted. The applicant is here.
Thank you, Mr. Giannacchio. Excuse me. Ms. Pettigo, the floor is yours.
Well, I'll start with the slide presentation of the way the house its condition is now, as we see it today, and what's occurred to it over time, and the lack of historic preservation being involved at all, with the exception of the front roof and part of the rear roof of the existing pod. I'll address the first, let's see. First of all, the proposal is to increase the livable space of the structure by adding a second floor. We're not really adding a complete second floor, since you see the rear of this house has a two-story block on it, on the very, should we look at it, or is it in your memories? Okay. We're trying to fill in the space in between that huge block on the back and the front of the house. The other problem we're having is we have an elderly couple who are trying to utilize the upstairs and the downstairs. In order to do that, we have to recreate an interior staircase so it will accommodate a chair lift. And the connector ridge roof from the front to the back is the same height as this. So it's at 7 feet at the ridge. And you've got a 2'6" hallway that connects you from the rear of the rear pod to the front of the house, the main mast. So I was trying to pull the house together and have it not look so pieced, and in order to give them additional space to live in. Roofs should be preserved in their original size, shape, and pitch. Well, we can tell from the existing drawings that, and what happened before 1996 or 1998, before it became historic property, is probably why that's all the way it is. Guidelines 11A4C states additions should be compatible in design in keeping with the original building's design, roof shape, materials, and color, and location of window and door cornice heights. Again, I really have nothing to reference to in regard to what was there, because there's nothing there now that was there, historically speaking. And then in 11A4H states additions should not be made by adding new stories. Well, I question that, because yes, we're adding a connector, but a two-story portion of the house is already existing. And the gables or dormers that are on the sides of the house are room-sized dormers. They're not really dormers. They're full-size rooms. Demolition, if tied to future development of the property, future development should be compatible in scale, size, and use with the existing zoning and existing characteristics of historic property where the development is located. Well, that's questionable as well. There's a lot of houses that have been played with over the years and blown out of proportion, and then we've got the moratorium coming up. We are within the square footage allowance for that portion in regard to the city, by the way. Again, I was just trying to get them more living space and trying to make this piece of property look a little more pleasant to the eye, and that's my argument.
Thank you, Ms. Pettico. Mr. Hosfield?
I tend to agree with your interpretation of adding a story to the building. And my question to the staff would be, obviously you wrote it up as adding a new addition, but how does it set for it to be an addition to an existing second floor, as opposed to adding, we're not adding a third story to a two-story building, we're adding second floor space to existing second floor space.
Filling in the middle is essentially what you're saying.
Yeah, yes.
In light of the fact that the pod on the back, that is almost tower-like in the way it relates to the rhythm of the cottage roof line, part of that is, is that a legitimate concept to continue on what is essentially a 1 and 1.5 story cottage? So does it make it more appropriate to make more of it, as in increase it. The staff and the guidelines, I don't think, can go there.
Thank you.
Mr. Magrish?
Well, this is a bit of a quandary. In
They
that,
usually are when I'm down here.
yeah, in that this house has been so substantially altered that, other than the basic, very basic form, it's virtually unrecognizable as the typical cottage plan that is prevalent throughout the neighborhood. But the problem I have is I don't know whether it's a better thing to say, oh, well, it's already so altered, go ahead and alter it some more, or whether to say, enough. This house has had all the changes it's going to have as far as stories and height, and that we need to just let it lie. So it's really, I really don't know precisely what way to go with this. That back element, the sort of tower that Betty was talking about, I mean, it's conceivable that could be considered an architectural feature, and by eliminating the space around it, you no longer have a, quote, tower on the back. I mean, this is all pre-existing, pre the H1, and with those large dormers, if those are considered an architectural feature, then by adding all this, then we eliminate them. They no longer become an architectural feature because it becomes one unit. So I think that my feeling is that maybe it might be better just to leave it and not try to add anything more to it at this time. Just in respect to what's left of the historic material that's there. But it is very difficult, and I know that it's been a difficult project. So,
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Mr. Billings? Ms. Sumner?
This is a difficult case to review because I don't think more bad equals good. So at this point, I really don't have a comment or a question until I just look more and listen. I'll leave it at that.
Well, people are considering just a suggestion, sort of. I think that there probably is enough there's a high enough number of issues with the project as proposed that a conceptual review might help design the project and help you and the applicant
Reach some middle ground.
Reach some middle ground. It's not fair to the applicant nor the staff or us to try to design something on the fly. We would not get a product that anyone's happy with. And I think that if the property owners are willing and you can have some time to have some conversation with them, I think that having it kept, withdrawing this and coming back for a conceptual review and, going over some more details and talking about it would end up with a much better, for everyone involved. I think it'd be a better project if you'd like to consider that.
Well, I received this agenda around noon today. So then when I read through it, I immediately started coming up with alternative solutions to this. So to achieve getting headroom to connect the space that is already lived in upstairs and having space to adjust the staircase and et cetera and get some other needs met. So maybe it's not a total two-story. Maybe we just take the roof line up a little higher on one side and move everything over and get more space inside.
And those are exactly the sort of conversations I think that. Right. One other thing before I ask, vinyl is no longer an allowable material. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it.
That's a typo.
Okay. No worries. Okay.
I support that idea. I think we'll get a much better product, and it's much fairer to the property owner to sort of go through a process
Would
as
you like to
opposed
say
to just
anything?
kicking it out.
My name is Suresh Saxena. I'm the owner of the property. I used to practice pediatrics in Harlan, just moved here about 6 years ago, bought that house about 27 years ago. And that house has seen few, in fact, most of the house is 1986 and above because original structure is already pretty much changed. Let me give the personal perspective what's happening. First of all, we are not changing the front of the house. We are going to preserve that. We are not going to change the footprint of the house. We're going to preserve that. And the third thing is that the size will be a little bit modified. And like she said, this is a 2-story building. And the total height of the building is not changing. We are matching the roof with the current height. So overall, the height isn't changed, the front isn't changed, and we are just creating some more space for our convenience. Because we are the only few houses in which the owner lives. So we are living. The rest of the property are rental property. And we are getting old. We need a staircase with the lift provision, and that's why we need this additional space. And then there are many portions of the upper story where there's not enough head clearance. So by changing the pitch and adding this roof, the house will be much safer. So really, it is the need which is forcing us to do all this. And we want to preserve as much architectural beauty and as much as historical as we can. And like you all said, that we can sit down and try to design some method in which everybody's needs are met. But really, we are not trying to change much of what is happening at this time. So.
Thank you very much. I think everyone's in agreement that conceptually there's room for an expansion to the property, and I think we just need to meet. And that's part of maintaining a viable historic district is the evolution and making sure that the use of the property is kept up and adapts to the current ways people are living, and at the same time, respecting the district and the nature of the property itself. And that's where the challenge and hashing everything out is. But I think we can get there if a conceptual review would probably be the best forum for that to start in.
We had to start somewhere.
Sure. Procedurally,
actually, I want to see the pictures of the house again because this reminds me of the Sarah Winchester house in California. If
Yes.
anybody,
Yes.
I didn't say it was the same as. I said it reminds me of. And I'm not an architect, but if you could put them back up, Randy. I was just.
Can't get from here to there.
That's what I was thinking. Is the middle section connected to the back tower?
Yeah,
To that
barely.
2.5 foot tall?
Barely.
Is it like a kiddie crawl way or something?
I can barely get through.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. But anyway, I think a conceptual review is a good idea, and I thought that earlier when I was seeing the pictures. But that's what I was reminded of.
I certainly agree that all of your issues and goals as the owner are good reasons and good things to want to work towards. And I agree that some changes need to be made. But I also agree a conceptual review is a good idea.
Okay.
Procedurally, I don't think it makes any difference whether we go ahead and act on this particular case or you withdraw it, because there would be substantive changes to whatever application would come out of the conceptual review that would be, you would get around the 1 year catch. So it's you're the applicant's
I think we're
pleasure.
going to move pretty quickly on this and try to get it resolved.
Be the cleanest if you withdraw.
I'll withdraw.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for coming down. And if you want to get with staff, I'm sure they can get you the timetable about when they would need materials for the next meeting.
Okay.
Or whatever works best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, right before we, well, the case is withdrawn. So, was anyone here to speak to this case tonight? Don't want anyone to go unheard. Okay. Let's see, I believe we need to,
No, we've got one.
we've got to hop back over to the Bell Court Historic District at 222 Delmar Avenue, paint unpainted brick structure. Did that applicant make it?
We don't believe so.
I believe so. Let's see.
No.
Deadline for action is November 27th. So we have time to table the case until the next hearing to give the applicant opportunity to appear, or
Mr. Chair,
go ahead and act on it as well.
sorry, and I just wanted to say that the guidelines are very specific about this particular issue, and I'm sorry that the applicant is not here, but I think that we could go ahead and act on it because it's very sort of cut and dry.
I agree with you, Mr. Magrish, and I would certainly support a motion to that effect if the rest of the board feels the same way.
I'd just see if there's anybody from the audience who has to comment on this case.
Absolutely. Is anyone in the audience here to speak to 222 Delmar Avenue? Don't see anyone moving. Okay, would certainly entertain a motion regarding this one, please.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion, reference case 0545022-E at 222 Delmar Avenue, to deny the application as submitted per the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Magrish. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Sumner. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we have two other items of business before we close the formal hearing and move into the conceptual review. We need to review and approve minutes from the October 12th, 2009 hearing. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
I was not present at the meeting, so I'm going to abstain from the vote.
Thank you.
Did I miss, I was making notes, but
You did indeed. I missed postponing case number 9 at 322 West 3rd Street to demolish addition, construct addition. The applicant has requested postponement until November 11th, 2009. Could I please have a motion to that effect?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Certainly entertain a motion to accept the minutes from October 12th, 2009.
So moved.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please note one abstention. The other item of official business we have is the Conceptual Review Bylaws Subcommittee. Asking for a quick update on that, Mr. Billings.
We're working on a draft.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Look forward to reading that. And this now closes the formal public hearing, and we'll now move into the conceptual review portion of the program this evening. It's much less formal, much less relaxed. Everybody can just take a deep breath. The first conceptual review this evening is at 200 East Bell Court. The concept is to construct a second floor to a garage and attach to a main structure. Conceptual reviews are a forum where applicants, design professionals, the board, the public, and the staff can all sort of get together and talk about ideas and how to get additions and projects built and sort of help streamline the process. Like I said, it's very informal, and usually the way we do these things is staff runs through a presentation to get everybody an overview of the project, and then we'll start talking about it. So if staff would like to start, Ms. Armstrong.
This is the property at 200 East Bell Court. At this time, you see in the foreground, the owners have submitted a COA and received permission to repair and replace their box gutters as needed. And at this time, they're requesting a conceptual review for a project, an addition above their garage. So presently, you see the rear addition, and you see an existing sort of overhang in this location, and then here's sort of the garage in the foreground. In the background, you can see the structure itself. We'll run through these pictures of just the site. And the proposal is to construct a second, but actually put 2 courses more of concrete block on this addition, put a second story on the addition, on the garage, attach it to the structure. The proposal is to clad the bottom story in stone, with the upper story being redwood, and also having hardy plank panels. It's just pictures from the site. Here's the plan. We have a connector, then the garage, the floor plan. There. As on one of your submissions from the applicant, there's a plan that says that this part was denied. This was never denied because it was never heard by staff or board. So just want to disregard that on the actual plan that you received. Oops. This is the proposed plan presently. Connector. In the new addition, this is a screened-in porch. This sheet just sort of shows with some plans that the architect used to create the plan as you see. Here's some just schematics. You can see the different materials that will be used. Guidelines are included for your reference at this time because this is conceptual review. There's no findings. However, some things to be considered are as follows. Is it appropriate to construct a second floor addition on top of an existing garage? Is it appropriate to attach a garage to the main structure with a breezeway? Are accessory buildings located in character with the other secondary buildings for the street, the alley, or the property not close or to attach to the primary building? Does proposed design disrupt the historic pattern of the neighborhood? Is the complexity of the building form, shape compatible with existing adjacent buildings? Does the architectural details and articulation of the new construction relate in scale, rhythm, portion, and texture to the existing, adjacent, and surrounding buildings? Does the new addition have the same number of stories, and is it within 10% of the average height of the existing and adjacent buildings? Is the setback consistent with other structures on Belcourt or the Belcourt Historic District? Do the proportion, structural emphasis, and rhythm of the new building reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of the existing and adjacent historic buildings? Does the roof of the new building relate in shape, pitch, and materials of the roofs of the existing, adjacent, and surrounding buildings? Are the openings compatible in scale, size, and proportion to established patterns of the openings in existing, adjacent, surrounding buildings? Are the materials compatible with the existing structure and the adjacent surrounding buildings? Are the materials in scale to the building which they are located and compatible with the materials of the existing, adjacent, surrounding buildings? We have no recommendations at this time, and the applicant and owners are here. So turn it over to them.
Thank you very much. Please.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Bragg with Thought Space Architects. This is Michael and Jana. They are suffering in their current house for floor space. They have 5 children, and this is their way of expanding their space without taking up any more of their very tight site. Both of them have a penchant for the contemporary, so we did go in that direction. All of the windows, so there are datums across the windows in the addition that match up with the addition on the back of the house that's existing. We've tried to match the horizontality on the top with the existing siding on the back. Try to use similar tones as the brick in the redwood so that it ties in. The neighbor to the north on that plan has a concern about the building being there and how it affects her garden space, and so the owners have tried to accommodate that with high windows that give her continued privacy and adding a green screen to that wall so that it becomes part of her garden rather than a structure.
Okay, let's see. Anyone like to go ahead and jump in? Rob?
I'll start. I actually kind of like this. I think it's a creative solution to a problem that a lot of people run into, especially with trying to do extensions and incorporate garages, which are difficult when you're dealing with a house that didn't have one, basically. The one question that I have is, well, first of all, you're basically reusing the existing concrete block structure? Is
Yes.
that it? Can it support this?
No, and we have already a structural engineer on board, Brown and Kubican, and they have done some preliminary design work saying that 4 steel columns inset in the corners and tied to the block, and then we would set steel structure on top of that and the floor structure on top of that. So the block is really carrying nothing but the engineered stone.
Okay.
It's not carrying any more load.
So it's you sort of have a pole structure on top of.
Yeah, we cut the slab on the interior corners and place those columns with new footings.
And then I assume they've also looked at the structure of connecting the connector bridge between the main house and this.
It's like an 8-foot span at that point, so they can be LVLs or wood eye joists at that point.
It looks like it's the garage it's 21.6 from ground level to the roof bridge or the top of the wall. Basically, it's a flat roof structure. So
Yes.
a ridge, parapet wall. Thank you. I was just wondering where that dimension particularly came from, other than.
We did some preliminary sizing on the structure in order to get ceilings that were above 9 feet. We needed to go up that high and have like a 14-inch to 16-inch deep structure for the floor and the roof.
The only criticism that I have really of the whole thing is that I feel like that the way that second story portion of the house relates to the existing, I think it works pretty well right at where the existing garage and the floor level come together. But when you get up to the top, it's sort of an arbitrary height. It doesn't really have any direct connection back to the lines of the existing structure. The only thing I'd say is if there was a way to do it without totally ruining the livable space and ceiling heights, to try to bring it down a little bit, if possible. I just think that you need to look more at the lines, the actual cornice line. I'm looking at this
Right.
here. Sort of look at this and what's happening back here, rather
Well,
than
this-
having that come up there.
The 21.6 actually does align with where this 1970s addition meets the original house.
does? Okay, it doesn't on the drawing, but
We left off all of the detailing on the original house, and because of the time constraint, and we just showed the massing, so.
the cornice.
The details
and all-
actually
and
line
like-
up.
Like, so there's like, all the cornice and all that is coming up, so that actually is the same.
Yes.
Well, I mean, yeah, if that's the case, then never mind.
I think that's one of those things where if you could just provide a little more information that demonstrates to us what informed that decision, it would help us see it more your way than that it appears to be taller than anything else that it nearly lines up with.
Randy, if you go back 4 slides maybe, quickly.
Yeah, if you could point out the cornice that you're lining up with, that would help me.
Where the gutter is on the frame part.
Where the existing cornice is and where this slope begins on this 1970s addition, that's what.
We're lining with.
On what basically was the
Is
original
there a
portion of
side
the house.
elevation, more of the side of the house?
Okay, so you're right there where the brick portion is.
Right- yeah, right there.
That's that 21.6 or whatever.
Yes.
Oh, okay. It didn't appear that way on this, but if that's truly the case, then there's definitely.
With more detailed drawings of the
there.
existing, I think that'll become apparent.
Randy, if you would go back, I think 6 slides now. I got a quick question. Yep. Okay. 5 slides. Does that existing roof member, does that connect to the garage currently?
It does.
Well, everyone, I agree. I think this is a unique situation and a very well-designed solution to this unique situation. I'm very glad that you all are receptive to contemporary architecture. I think the design's been executed very well and relates very much to the original structure. I think one of another key element that hasn't been talked about yet is the lightness of the breezeway. I think that's very important. And the sort of attaching the new space to the old space. It's very clear, of course, that it has nothing to do with the original structure, but it still provides some relation from the new space to the old space, and
We are touching down as lightly as possible. We aren't covering up any windows. We're actually just cutting a window down to make a door.
That's, and one of the concepts we, I guess, don't talk about a lot that's sort of understood in the preservation community that many design professionals pick up on is that, if an addition were to be built, that the best way to do it is to minimize the disturbance to the original structure, so that at some point in the future, the addition could be removed and the original structure, as much as possible, would be still there. And that philosophy is reflected in your design. I appreciate it. Let's see. Go ahead, Mr. Rollins.
Couple of questions. One, it doesn't seem like there's any stairs leading from the ground up to this new addition.
Pardon?
There's no stairs, means of ingress or egress, except for the walkway back to the main structure.
Correct.
I don't know if you checked with fire code. I don't know how that might affect this or not. Having to traverse over that connector, if that would somehow render this structure separate under the fire code, that you would need a separate one. I don't know. Just think about.
Okay, yeah, I don't think it does, as long as we have egress windows from the bedroom, and there's also the means of egress from the porch.
But it's not into the front. It's not on the ground floor. It's still above the ground. So I don't know. Just tell you to check into it.
I don't think that makes a difference. I think what you're saying is correct.
Was it within the, okay.
I think that's correct. I won't say for sure, and we don't have any jurisdiction over that, but
Well, building inspection has reviewed, this plan, and that's not been an issue with them, because as long as they have egress windows, that's what they're also, there's a equation they use as far as what's the closest entranceway, and
Okay.
it's so many feet, and I think they meet that.
The only reason I bring up is, I mean, we don't care for the design, whether there's not, it's just not good if you get so far along and realize that there's a problem there that has to be fixed somehow that may affect the structure, so. How much of the current area is covered versus how much will be covered when the new walkway's put in?
Well, there's no additional ground coverage at all.
I don't mean the ground coverage, I mean actually the roof cover that exists now between the main house and the garage, which that's the connection you have
The
between the two
connector is
structures.
actually smaller than the existing connector.
The walkway will be?
Yes.
I kind of like the fact that that it has sort of a covered area there that you're using, and that's what it looked like to me. It was going to be reduced in size. I might look at a way to preserve that connection that still exists as well. I don't know if it's functionally usable at this point for how big it is, whether you actually can sit out there underneath it, if it's a light rain or mist or something like that. But you're removing that protective structure for a walkway, but it's going to be smaller. I think I'd like to see something that is maybe either slanted or pitched roof that comes off that. I don't know what the designs would look like, but I might look at that issue.
That was a thought, because they do want to use that as an entertaining area out there. That's why we had the stall doors on the side and the one large garage door, so that could all be one large outdoor room.
Is this actually going to be, is it going to be raised up? It looks like there's a wood deck there now, and in the drawings it looks like there's a new paving surface. Is that going to be dropped back down to the underlying surface height, or is it going to be brought?
There are grade changes we have to work out.
Okay.
It's really been explored yet.
Other than that, I don't really have any other questions.
I'd like to talk about the stone for just a moment, if we can. The new veneer at the garage at the base, is that stone to match the existing base of the house, the existing foundation?
We were looking to use a veneer stone since that,
Right, but
yes,
Will
to match as close as possible.
how close have you gotten to matching it so far with products? Do you have a dead match or pretty
Very close.
The reason I bring it up is I see that, I assume that what you're showing as the base for the new patio area that we were just discussing, it looks like it'll extend and go all the way up. And those match what's there, is what you're telling me. What I'm getting at is it looks like what you're adding to the garage reaches out and touches the original house by way of the patio. When the addition itself, what's in the air, has made such a conscious effort to be very different. And not just the connector and the addition, but even the connector is almost a third element, like a smaller, thinner piece that connects the two masses. I wonder if a new material should be considered for the patio to make the similar.
Paving or for the garage?
I don't mind the garage being the stone to match the house. It's the piece in between the connector. Just something to consider by maintaining the same sort of separation of a new material between mass 1 and mass 2 like you did with the connector up above.
The new paving surface?
Yes.
Yes, the new paving surface will not be matching anything.
Not at all?
No, that's there now.
Oh, well, then my assumptions are wrong, and you are great, and we all agree.
Okay.
Concern addressed.
I would, not to discount anything that Mr. Billings has said, my personal recommendation to you would try to keep that breezeway as actually as light and as tight as you can.
It's only 5 feet wide on the inside, so it's just really...
That's pretty tight.
That's pretty tight.
With the height of the new addition, too, I see potential for getting kind of dark back there, kind of cavern canyon-like, so I agree. I'd want to keep that connector as dainty as possible to keep it as open as possible.
We have different views on the guidelines.
Absolutely.
We do all the time. We still get along.
Staff?
I did have a question for staff directly, actually. We did just hear a case concerning an addition by adding a story to the structure. Now, that was a primary structure, and this is a secondary structure. Does the case have any, or does the staff have any established views on that we should consider?
Well, broadly, I think that from the guidelines intent that, first of all, there's that age-old question of do you hook the outbuilding to the main house? This is both an outbuilding and a primary residence being married. The outbuilding, being the garage, is in an unusual footing in terms of the footprint of the property because it's unusually close to the house. Most of them, in character with the neighborhood, are pushed further back. And if that were the case, you obviously wouldn't be able to open this door at all in terms of what you're considering. So you've got a rather different situation to start with because of the proximity of the garage to the main mass. Staff's interpretation probably, and we haven't discussed it at great length at our end either, and we'll do so, but I think it's not consistent with the guidelines to put the second story and hook it to the house. I think the rhythm of the neighborhood, that has not been the character and the evolution of the neighborhood. In terms of if once you cross that hurdle of the how do you accomplish it if you're going to do it, I think this is a rather industrial feeling design in the sense of, yes, it is very clean lined, but its rhythms of its openings and its wall to glass relationships and so forth don't speak to the main house much at all. Main house not so much being the piece it's coming right off of, that being that 1970s edition, but the earlier initial truly main mass. I think it's a bit of a disservice not to have more articulation about what is the character of the historic house in your elevations or your depictions.
Without imitating history.
I'm sorry?
Without imitating history.
Well, no, I'm saying it's hard, first of all, no, it can be done without imitating history. I'm saying that it's hard for anybody reviewing this to measure the relationships because you've got a void in your schematics. So your schematic makes the historic main mass a series of bland walls, but that is not its character. So I think there are considerable concerns from what the intent of the guidelines are and the approach to this would be an overview of the staff's take on it.
I'd also mention something about the
It's
materials. Because we also have a series of brick, and they also just put a huge brick retaining wall on the structure, and then plus, so you've got cementous board, you've got hardy plank, you've got brick, now you've got stone. And you have a stone foundation, however, it's not as, while it covers the whole square footprint of the building, it's not as massive, and there's not a huge, precedent for stone garages in Belcourt. And to think about that much stone it's a lot of stone, and it's not necessarily the character. And I would always, people within the guidelines always try to keep the materials simpler and not add so many materials.
Can I ask a quick question, too, relative to that garage? Obviously, the garage is not an iconic piece that you're desiring to preserve as a concrete block garage, I assume.
Pardon?
The garage is not an iconic piece, and hence I'm suspecting you're not retaining it out of a concern for preserving it.
No.
All right. Did you consider putting the garage where the parking area for the car is and having a addition start at grade in a more compatible with the character of the neighborhood sense?
There were a couple of things. We didn't want to take up any more room on the site because it's a very tight site right now. And Well, they really wanted to be up where their children were rather than down on the ground floor. We had actually discussed a ground floor option. And it was a financial issue as well. We had looked into somewhere between $7,000 and $15,000 worth of savings to leave what we have now and not put any more footprint on the site and build on what we have.
Well, you're going to do a great deal of structural engineering to utilize that garage footprint, which there's nothing wrong with. But
in the end, it requires 4 column footings, though, instead of a continuous footing for a whole new addition. There were lots of cost savings there.
It sounds like one of the things that we just heard that you might consider before making an application was to show more detail of the original structure in your proposal and use some of that information or more of that, use some of that information to inform more of your design as content. And, you know, that accomplishes several things. One, it strengthens your argument and your design or the basis for having your design, but it also gives us the information and reference points to understand why and how. It'll make it easier for you to talk us into it, for sure. It sounds like you're still going to have trouble getting past the second floor addition issue, which is key. And all your reasoning is relevant. I understand completely the financial reasons.
I'm sorry. Judy, grab the microphone.
They just finished $100,000 worth of renovations to the kitchen, the laundry, and the bathroom there on the first floor, and they didn't want to have to disturb any of that in the addition.
So if we don't have a site plan of the kitchen stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So to address your suggestion about, well, what would happen if we actually just built onto the back of the house, we wind up with an interior renovation then that landlocks the extra bedroom. Doesn't have to go to get to the bedroom. And also it separates that one room from all the rest of the house. So you have one bedroom completely isolated, separate from all the other bedroom living spaces in the home. So that was the idea of trying to say, well, what can we do with the garage that allows us that extra bedroom, but keeping it up with the other bedroom living spaces? I don't know if that helps at all, but
I think that, what I was looking at with this is somewhat a unique condition. Every property we look at has some unique condition to it. Of course, Betty is absolutely correct about some of the issues dealing with the whole second floor addition, but I think those might be able to be worked out. The connector piece, what I'm looking at with that is the fact that there is that connector thing. I don't know what's like an awning or whatever, but the two are actually already, although kind of flimsily, tied together. And
the code actually points out about connecting additions with connectors, if possible.
Right. So I'm just saying there's a little bit of existing condition that is unique and not typical to the neighborhood that might be addressed as the justification possibly for that type of connection. But I think that looking at window patterns and rhythm, materials, all those things, even though I think it's a really cool design the way it is, but I think that those things, Betty's absolutely right, those need to be addressed and just studied a little bit more closely so that you get something that is a little bit more harmonious.
I'm not sure it wouldn't take much more to make it more relevant to the existing structure. Just with some consideration of window size and height, you can start to make the rhythmic connection
across to the existing building across to the new construction.
Also, the solid and void, where you have voids and they're solids. I mean, you might look at it sort of graphically about what's happening with the void of the porch in the front and things like that. So, I mean, not copying anything, but just how that plays.
There's some items that, when Ms. Armstrong presented the case earlier and the findings she read, those 13, sorry, I lost my page. There's 13 items, and many of them we've discussed. Those are not necessarily direct, conflicts with the guidelines, but they're certainly areas of concern from the staff's perspective. And if there are any of those that we haven't brought up that pop into your mind and that you want to talk about before we leave this evening, there's certainly good things to keep in mind while you're, for finding the design. And also certainly just you're not limited to one conceptual review. It's certainly your right to come back for another one if you wish, and staff is available to meet with you and help refine things between conceptual designs. And I'm sure that you've been through this before. I just want to sort of explain the process again to you, and ask you if you have any questions of us at this time.
Well, so I'll use my active listening skills, right? Tell me if I've heard the right message. The right message might be you got a unique situation, okay, that we've tried to creatively address, and that on balance, the idea of a room on top of the garage and a small connector feels okay. But we need to make some adjustments before we really submit to address concerns about rhythm and balance and some windows and some materials.
Does it make a difference that I think the code actually speaks to having a second story on an original historic piece or a main structure? I mean, this is...
Just to clarify, you say code, you mean guideline?
Guidelines.
Okay. Our guidelines, not...
I would say that that would certainly be something in a presentation that you might be able to make some arguments towards. And conceptually, in response to your comments, I think that the board overall has expressed some interest in the project and the direction it's heading. But that said, that there's some concerns with the staff that still need to be addressed, and with regarding materials and rhythm and fenestration and the staff has a concern with
that's kind of the sticking point.
We're trying to say, okay, is this concept a non-starter? If it's a non-starter, then okay, that's why we're here.
One of the other questions I have is there was a application before us about 9 months ago, I believe on Ashland Avenue, where they had proposed a new addition that was to connect a garage to the main structure. And one of the primary intents, or one of the primary characteristics of historical neighborhoods, is that garages were not historically attached to the primary structure. And that in that case, not saying this is the same, we had a discussion, I don't remember how long it was, that one of the reasons that addition was inappropriate was its attempt to draw a new garage and attach it to the structure. I don't know that this is the exact same situation, but I think that as the board, we at least need to be consistent to remember how we apply them. This is somewhat different because it's an existing garage that we're trying to tie in through a renovation and addition. It's not a new garage. So it's not the same situation. But I feel like I need to make you aware of all of the history and to make sure that we're consistent as a board in what we try to do to maintain the historical integrity of neighborhoods. I think this is somewhat of a different case because it's an existing garage that's being tied in instead of a new garage as being a new addition. But I think that's a part of this discussion that's going on that I don't want to forget.
Certainly, we need to be mindful of things we've done in the past and things that we're doing in the present.
And not just what we've done, but why we've done them. Because the why is the guidelines, which is what we're here to protect.
Well, I think that was what I was saying before, that this is somewhat unique. If the application was to come in and there was no structure, no garage structure on that site, it would be totally inappropriate because that's not what's happening in that neighborhood. The fact is that garage, as lovely as it is, and I mean, it's not a contributing building, certainly, but the fact that it is there, that space has been used at least for a period of time, that there's not an intrusion into the site with an object that isn't already foreign to the neighborhood. So I think it's just that's what makes this somewhat different than the project on South Ashland, or if they were proposing the same thing in the house next door.
It might be
It may
different,
not
yeah.
be appropriate. It's just that in this particular case, at least it's falling within an area of reasonability. Reasonability, is that a word? I don't know. Anyway.
It is now.
So, I mean, I think that's where, it's not that the project is just so off base that it couldn't go. I think it needs to have some further study. We'll just put it that way. And possibly a second conceptual view might be very beneficial.
All right, so again, just make sure I'm going to make sure I go back with the right message, right, before we engage the team to look at it some more. It's not a non-starter to add an addition. It's not the end of the world because of this particular site to connect it. Go work on it some more. Come back and talk again.
I believe from the members sitting on the board this evening, overall, that's what you're hearing. You're, however, not hearing that from the staff.
Okay. I don't know how the staff works with the board.
Staff's responsibility is
I don't know how it works.
Staff's responsibility is to take the project that has been proposed and respond to it with the guidelines. It's not within their purview to interpret. They apply the guidelines as they are written in the most conservative. I don't want to, if I misspeak, please jump in. Well, no, please, really. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it's to apply the guidelines with no real.
I think part of the word you might wish for is consistently.
Yes, consistently. And, this is their, I want to say profession. It is your profession. Certainly, gosh, I'm at a loss for words.
Their job is to help applicants walk through the process, through how the guidelines are written, based upon the vast experience and knowledge they have, both with this board, with prior boards, applications, the staff approvals that don't have to come to the board, help applicants walk through to say, these are what we think are going to meet the guidelines, and to prepare a staff report that makes findings and conclusions of law and of fact based upon that. And on the front is to help you walk through the process, then once you submit something to then say, this fits or doesn't fit within that, and then to turn that staff report over to us and to you all for us to then to look at based upon our application of the guidelines to the same facts to see if we're in agreement with. Sometimes we are, as you've seen tonight, sometimes we're not, as you've seen tonight, and then we have to make findings of fact and law if we don't agree. So the staff's job is to, I think, help guide you through the process, which they do an excellent job of, to make it. The guidelines never say a better project, but I think everyone agrees that is a clear intent, is to have a better project, and better can be subjective at times, but it means, does it preserve the historical integrity of the site and neighborhood, at the same time try to meet the applicant's needs for what they're trying to obtain. Is that fair?
I think something else that bears highlighting in all of that is that you have the opportunity to work with staff prior to your application, and they can help you, by doing that, there's not a surprise when you make your application, hopefully. Is generally, if you have something that...
And we did. We worked with Amelia.
Well, good. So you're aware of that as an opportunity, and hopefully it's something you continue to do, even if you do or don't come back for another conceptual review. That's certainly an asset that the staff does play that role.
And just the conceptual review process is a wise decision when you're thinking about doing something.
Okay. Well, we felt like we needed to come get some feedback because it's fairly innovative, trying a solution for a difficult problem. And with your information, we'll just proceed.
Just to see if anyone's here to like to talk about it. No, don't think so. Staff, do you have anything else? Word?
I would, for your thoughtful consideration, if we were to see this again, how are you going to get the water off of the roof?
It will slope to the backside, and there'll be a scupper box that will then take it down to the lower roof on the back, and then
Okay.
there will be gutters to take it off the back.
Off the
where-
back side.
Where the green screen is.
Great. Okay. There's a lot of cantilevering going on, and that's always a, oh, wait, where does the gutter go? So as long as you've thought of it, that's great.
Thank you all very much. The next conceptual review this evening is in the North Side Historic District. The property is 322 West 3rd Street. The scope of the work is to demolish an addition and construct an addition.
This is the neighboring building to the building we just had a discussion about a couple cases ago, and this is 322 West 3rd Street. This is the front on the sidewalk of West 3rd. Here again is the property in question. Portion that we're talking about now is, in the scope of work, is to demolish this one-story addition and then to construct a new addition in the same footprint. Again, here's just a closer version, a closer viewpoint. Here is on the east side. And the proposal, again, is to demolish the structure and then to construct a two-story frame addition that would be clad in hardy plank with dormers, and to retain the chimney you see, and to continue this upwards, and to construct a stoop that would be facing the west side. And here is the plan. This is the west elevation, with having a two-story addition with French doors and a dormer. The footprint of the proposed addition will be the same footprint of the existing. Your guidelines are included for your reference. And since this is a conceptual review, we have no findings. However, items to consider would include: is it appropriate to demolish the frame addition? Is the addition smaller and simpler to the original building in scale, design, and placement? Does the new addition's roof line step down from the peak of the existing roof line so the new existing main roof, or the existing main roof remains evident? Does the new addition have the same number of stories? Is it within 10% of the average height of the existing and adjacent building? Does the roof of the new building relate in shape, pitch, and materials to the roofs of the existing, adjacent, surrounding buildings? Is the complexity of the building form, shape compatible with existing adjacent buildings? Does the new addition have a more suburban appearance to be located in such an urban area and attached to a noted, such a structure noted to be built prior to 1817? Does the architectural details and articulation of new construction relate in scale, rhythm, proportion, texture to the adjacent and surrounding buildings? Do the proportion, structural emphasis, and rhythm of the new buildings reflect the predominant proportion, emphasis, and rhythm of the adjacent and existing surrounding buildings? Are the openings compatible in scale, size, proportion to establish patterns of openings in existing, adjacent, and surrounding buildings? Are the materials in scale to the building which they are located onto? Recommendations not at this time, however, the applicants are present.
Thank you very much, Ms. Armstrong. Gentlemen, I'd like to come forward again. Welcome back.
Thank you. Just as you know, if you're dealing with historic structures, as we start to peel the onion, so to speak, you kind of get to the rotten core in this case. And in the rear addition here, there was virtually no foundation. We actually could have just left it alone, I guess, but as we kind of peel it back, we found there was no foundation actually to the rear addition. It's resting on just a few concrete blocks. I might have some pictures in my cell phone, but nonetheless, just resting on some concrete blocks. There's no poured foundation there. Also, the sides of the structure, most of the boards are rotten, so we have to replace the rear addition. In deciding how to address that problem, we also noted the current stairway to the second floor certainly is not by any means code in any way whatsoever. If the current stairway remained to the second floor as is, I feel it would possibly endanger the safety of any residents that would be there and wouldn't allow for adequate or safe ingress and egress. So since we have to redo the rear addition, we wanted to first and foremost incorporate a stairway that was code and allowed for safe ingress and egress to the second floor for any occupant or resident, and making it a safe and accessible space. So, in doing so, I'll turn it over to Frank to address all the other issues then. So.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, I guess he spoke to a lot of the kind of the reasons why we're looking at doing this, but it's kind of an exciting project because it's a wonderful structure and it's got a great little garden next to it. And what we're trying to do is, again, like he said, try to get a stair to utilize the second level that meets code and it's more accessible. This is actually listed as a 2-story, but we're really looking at this as a 1.5-story to kind of tie into the existing building. And then kind of utilize that. The addition kind of becomes part of the existing building, if you will, with 1.5-story idea on that. And I've got, we worked with the staff a little bit prior, and they had some really good comments as far as the height and how we look at that, so that it's not, overbearing on the existing structure. And what the intent of the design was to do is, I walked around the site a lot to kind of see the angles and how to try to take the roof line and tie it into the building so as to where you're on the street, you hardly ever see the building behind it. I mean, it's really diminishes the 1.5-story height of it. There's a way you can put on a number. Number 11. Do you have sheet 11? Well, this is the site plan. This kind of shows the orientation of the button. On the side. Oh. Laser, the addition, there's the addition that we're talking about replacing. Go on to the next, go to number 11 up on the right-hand corner. Can you rotate that a little bit? 90 degrees? Oh, okay. This is kind of showing the original building and then the addition behind it. And we looked at the angles of how that roof would tie into the existing roof. And we actually brought it down from the original submittal about 1.5 feet, tying into the existing roof. The next sheet, you could. As you come on around, you can see that the building kind of situates itself back, and it basically consists of a simple pitched roof with a pair of dormers on either side of the roof. And the challenge that we had was to try to get a stair up and get enough headroom up there so that we can have a bedroom and usable space up there. The existing structure is built to where back then, the height clearances were very, very tight. And so we were trying to tie in the new addition into that to where it could actually be more usable space, but at the same time try to approach the design to where it really complements the existing structure but doesn't try to mimic it. The front of the structure is very simple in design, and we incorporated the back to kind of reuse the existing fireplace element into the new design and basically create something that really speaks in dialogue design to the original building. And of course, the buildings around it are mostly two-story structures, so we're not really impeding on the height of the buildings around the site. So as far as the windows and the design elements of the windows themselves, we're trying to keep the exact similar design of the windows and proportion and use those on the new addition as much as possible. The only, I guess, unique design element would be a pair of French doors that are on the, let's see, go to the next sheet. That shows go to the elevation. Right here, we're using a pair of French doors that uses a similar cantilevered canopy, if you will, that was on the original addition, that we're kind of using that dialogue over these French doors, and so that we can get some light and some accessibility into that garden that's wraps around the side of that building. On the east elevation, we're keeping it very simple. We mimic the dormer that's on the west elevation over on the east elevation with a couple of windows. And of course, we're just keeping the original structure as is, tuck pointing where it needs to be and keeping the brick back to where it can be maintained. Anything else, John? Right, yeah, that was the main comment we have from staff is the make sure that we're not overbearing the roof, and we really took a lot of exercise and to try to see how we can incorporate this addition and not detract from the original building, which is a wonderful structure. The addition would be clad in hardy plank board, and we will use similar shutter details on the windows, except for the very top windows. We're just using regular square punched openings without any shutters. This is kind of a common design element in buildings of this period. A door that goes back to the driveway in the rear, and we'll use a 6-panel door that kind of ties into the original door in that front portico. Nothing on the original structure we are going to alter at all. We're just going to repair and maintain what's there. Trying to think if there's any. I guess that's the genesis of the intent.
All right. Let's see if anybody has any comments or questions for you. Mr. Hosfield, do you want to start out?
I think overall, the materials and the intent, it's all strong and commendable, and there's no real major issue with that. I think the biggest point I see is, again, like you said was reflected by the staff, was that the addition is, the mass of the addition seems large for an addition as far as additions go, and the guidelines of the addition's mass compared to the original structure's mass. So I think it's really the height of the roof. Just my rough scaling off of the drawing you provided us, is it about a 4-foot difference from the peak of the addition's roof to the...
The original drawing we sent you was about 3 feet, just under 3 feet, but the new drawing, I've reworked it to get it down to about 1.5 feet. And if you notice that there's a connector roof that's slightly lower, which pushes that difference back, and then it's actually sloping away from the original roof. So it really diminishes that impact. A 2D elevation is hard to depict.
It is, but trying to draw as many facts from it as we can.
I'm not an architect, but this is the north elevation from the street side, is that this roof is not apparent actually from the street sidewalk or opposite sidewalk. So that is the actual north elevation from the street. You're not going to see any.
I understand, I guess, but if you were in the garden beside the building, this is a concern. So you're reworking the roof height to a degree, and that's good. One of the other things we tend to discuss often with additions like this is in plan, the setback between the original structure and the proposed structure is, I think, usually 1 foot. And I know we're dealing with a relatively narrow building to start with. Is that anything that the staff brought up when you guys started your conversation, or is it?
It is actually, because they're going back on the same footprint. We did talk about that a little bit, but not too much, because this addition is not too small.
And it's usually an issue of eaves and how they interact, I think, is part of that. But I don't, because it's a different roof pitch coming into it, they hit differently.
That's the point. And typically also we work, you do want to have an indentation. There is, because the material changed, because going from a width of brick to the not. We did talk to building inspection a little bit too about the setback issues of building right back on, because the property line between the neighboring and the building inspection, I think, is permissible for them to go back on that same lot. However, they can't have any windows on that side. They can,
That doesn't negate the H1
But, right, but
process,
it doesn't,
considering the setback from either side issue. It's still very much a legitimate concern from our guidelines perspective.
Well, and I don't know, with such a contrast between the materials and the eaves not being in apparent conflict, which is usually attached to that setback, or is one of the advantages of having that setback between original and the additions. I mean, I don't know that it doesn't work in this project, but how hard a rule is it from the staff's perspective, I wonder.
There have been very, very few instances, matter of fact, I can't think of a one, that there has not been a step in, at least of a brick length, from either edge, so that there's some distinction. And I would, just looking at this quickly, would suggest that still should be considered from the guidelines.
Even if this isn't I guess there's a question that I'm not sure I know the answer to, or at least I'm thinking through it, is whether this is a new addition or whether this is an addition that's being renovated.
Yeah, the fact that there will be a foundation from something torn down, from as Amelia said, from buildings inspections criteria, they would have the legal right to go back up on that same footprint. But the H1 process being the more restrictive, it could override that, and I think that there's some argument to be made perhaps for it was a pre-existing condition, and hence this process would continue that pre-existing condition. But one of the things to consider is that you do want anybody to understand that the historic mass has a footprint of X, and that the new addition has a footprint that leaves you to understand the footprint of the historic, so that you can stand there and go, there's the corner of the historic. And you don't see a corner if you have the wall run flush all the way back, up and back. So 8 inches or so may not be, it is a small addition, and we're very conscious that every inch counts, but 8 inches on either side may not be too much to ask. You would normally pursue more than that, ideally, but I think that would be a good compromise in this situation.
And I agree. I think you'd almost want to have some kind of little bit of offset, because you got two different materials coming in, and I think it looks good.
Is it feasible with the existing, in the attempts to reuse the existing foundation, is it feasible to step in and accomplish that step back from the addition to the original structure?
I think the original structure is slightly stepped back anyway, from the brick edge.
But didn't we also say there's no foundation under this building?
Well, it's concrete.
It's
But you're not going to be utilizing it.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Right, so this is a scratch build.
There you go. Okay, so it is within reason that you would be able to do this setback.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Those are all my big comments.
Show it step back a little bit anyway.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoskins. Mr. Magrish, you'd like to?
Just want to say, as long as we're still able to get in a stairway that meets code to get upstairs, 8 inches or something doesn't seem.
I was looking for driving factors in the plan, and I do see that there's the counter width and then the passage width between the stairs and the counter to consider as a driving factor for the rear wall. I don't know that the stairs couldn't be moved forward by shifting a step down the way I'm sure it can be done.
That's a little
how much shifteroo it's going to
rise
take.
and run.
Well, I don't know that we have to alter the rise and run so much as just take a step from the upper run and put it on the lower run and make the intermediate landing a step taller.
Mm-hmm.
One or two steps, and that buys you some room. I don't see as many driving factors on the front side of the building, but there's some playroom in there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It appears that Well, I'd have a question. The new stairway where on the first floor plan, you've pulled away from the existing rear wall by, I'm guessing, about a foot or so. Is that correct? Is that just to preserve the rear wall, or why do you have that much space?
Let me recall why we did that. I think it had something to do with we were concerned about the original foundation of the existing house, and also to create some kind of chase space. But again, this is a schematic plan, and we're playing with the. It has a lot to do with the roof on the dormer coming in and the stair coming up.
Right.
And you had to pull that over to get the right clearances.
At the top of the stair.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah. I was just curious because it's sort of I mean, I can understand you certainly can use it as a chase space for HVAC and plumbing and so forth, but it's sort of
it is a little larger,
unusually large area. The one thing about it, though, that I was looking at is as far as this connection between the original structure and the addition, and the fact that basically you're going to have to make a new foundation, you might be able to actually pull that in a little bit so there's sort of a very clear separation. Yeah, an indentation. Thank you. It's getting late. My vocabulary is going away. So that you've got sort of it'd be a little recess.
Like that.
Exactly.
Between the existing and the addition? You mean?
Right, and you could do that on both sides. You'd lose a little counter space and sort of bump in your kitchen, but not very much. And then that is fully within that chase area on the other side.
Yeah.
And it might make a very definite separation between the two pieces of the structure. And I think the thing that it will also do, and I know that it was larger, but it was sort of the same idea, where we had sort of a tight spot. There's a addition going up on 3rd Street, I believe, where they did sort of a similar thing, but it allowed the addition to then come back out to the width of
the main structure
of the what had been there anyway. You know, you don't have to pull it any further or whatever.
And that could happen. That's a good point, because that could kind of it doesn't have to be terrific amount of indentation, but it can happen.
I'm thinking about it even just as minor as a foot. Or so. I mean, other
maybe
than
6 inches or something.
This,
you have to make sure that you can get in there and maintain it. But
warn you before we get too excited about this idea. We need to consider what happens on the second floor and the elevation. What made it nice and clean and I think that was before us tonight. Another piece of that same application, 430 West 3rd Street.
Well, you're right. Yeah.
Was that it tucks in, and at the top it has a clean termination point. Not that what we're talking about can't be done, but it will need a lot of. It's a drastic change, and will need some consideration.
When you made that point, I thought I was thinking more of kind of a suggested reveal instead of a real deep, which may look okay bringing it up, but
I'm just saying that
it
may be a way to get that separation without losing a lot of space. And since you have this existing chase area in the plan, you can use that to your advantage to create the separation between the original structure without losing a lot of square footage inside we'll call it the replacement piece, rather than a new structure.
It's certainly no deal breaker. It's just something that's
and it's
needs
just
some careful
I think
consideration.
You can play with and see if it's something that would work. If it doesn't work, don't do it.
That's a good comment.
But overall, I think that Greg's concern about the roof height, if you can work with that anymore and try to bring it down at all, I think that would be a good thing. But overall, I think it's a nice solution. And again, another great house, and I commend you again for jumping into that.
For sale.
We'll talk. We'll trade. But I think that just sort of looking at the details and some of these issues will help it become a better project.
Thank you, Mr. Maggart. Mr. Billings?
I don't have a lot of comments, just a couple. A couple times I think you mentioned the new windows and shutters would be imitating the originals. Be careful. This is a discussion that I've brought up all the time. There's a very gray area between imitating historic, which is not allowed, versus keeping in consistency, harmony, design, character of the existing. So you can't copy it, but you got to complement it.
Right.
So just keep that in mind with your final plans with respect to those windows and the shutters.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. Staff?
Are you planning OG gutters, I assume?
Well, we really haven't, I haven't put a whole lot of thought on that. The original gutter on the front, we want to maintain that detail.
Right. Well, I'm just
whether we
thinking
need to
about
take
protrusions in terms of visibilities of not coming out, you know, get something built and the gutter hangs out wider than the building it's attached to. It's another reason to step it in.
Right.
Now, you've got those big dormer treatments, so you're not going to have much gutter anywhere except up on those. But anyway, it's something to keep in mind about your gutter depths, and time you do a little bit of cornice and gutter, you know, you've added.
Then it's sticking out, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost got a cricket in terms of the roof. It looks like you've got a cricket going to a hip, to a gable, essentially. I don't have a roof plan, but I mean, I think that's what we're talking. And yes, I mean, it's obvious. I only have the initial submittal, but it's obvious you've made some headway already on that, but it's a very strong issue within the historic districts to tuck new roofs under the profiles of the old ones. So keep on pulling that thing down. You've heard it from the board, but it's very important. And I don't misunderstand what you're trying to accomplish at all, but you know, having it your historic mass and then a bump up is a real no-no, to be quite in English. There are little things that I don't think you even particularly are prepared to talk about at this point, but the overhang on the French doors, there may be better solutions. Let's just leave it at that. There may be better solutions. But I think the concept of accomplishing something here is certainly much within the criteria, and you're getting there. But you got a little way to go.
Thank you.
Ms. Armstrong, Ms. Ginocchio, do you have anything you'd like to toss in?
There is one drawing of this north elevation. When we look at the side elevation, we know that it's going to be way up here. This will come down like this, and this dormer come over like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're talking about getting that roof line down, this elevation has to be correct.
Yeah, okay. And we were working with that when I generated these 3Ds to try to get that, deal with that height. So we'll show that in the next submittal.
Okay.
Not sure there's an audience. No. In turn. And thank you.
I would add, if we could see a roof plan in the next time this comes around, that would just help us understand what's happening.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I agree.
Do you all have any questions for us?
Yeah, if you do have any suggestions on how to get a stairway up and address the roof height and such, we're certainly welcome and open to suggestions. So we'll work on it maybe over the next few days and get back to us, because that's the problem, you know, is getting a code-safe thing. When somebody said maybe extending the downstairs step out a little bit is a good one. But any other suggestions to achieve that would be welcome.
Well, that it is a difficult problem, and try to stay within the guidelines, but we appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I believe that's it for this evening, and
Motion to adjourn.
thank you very much. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you both. Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all again.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate your input, everybody.
Thank you.
Fire tonight.